Welcome to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. And what we have in store for you today seems also most appropriate to the moment, as perhaps now we need most some kind of another spectacle. An escape artist, perhaps. Today we present a utopian counter-proposal with South African visual performance artist Atipatra Ruga. I want to thank our partners for their support of today's program. Today's program is actually a partnership with Performa in New York, the Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit, and Chelsea River Gallery down the road in Chelsea. Yeah, they're in the house tonight. Lovely ladies. I don't know that all of you know about Performa in New York, and I want to make sure you do. Performa because they are an essential partner this evening, Performa is an arts organization. It was founded by the Rose Lee Goldberg, dedicated to exploring the critical role of live performance and encouraging its form in new directions. It's most widely known for a biennial, which takes place every 2 years. It's a biennial of visual art performance. It now has enormous significance in the international contemporary art community. The next not to miss edition will be in November of 2017, so you should definitely mark your calendars. And Ati is with us today, fresh from New York City, after performing as part of Performa's recent fall gala. And a big thank you is also due to Isa Nickel, who is Performa's producing director, as Ati's visit with us is transpired via a chance meeting between Isa and myself in San Francisco last May. So, as for some goings on about town, join us this evening and tomorrow evening, Fall 2016 Stamp School Inter-Arts Showcase. This is at 7:30 at the Duderstadt on North Campus this evening and tomorrow evening. The show runs about an hour. There are 17 students in the program who will be presenting a wide range of original time-based work, always fun and provocative. Also tomorrow, while you're doing that, please do tell all your friends who did not make it here this evening that we will be presenting Ati for a special encore presentation tomorrow evening in downtown Ypsilanti. Downstairs at Bonacera Restaurant, start time 7 p.m. That's right in the center of downtown Ypsilanti at 200 West Michigan Avenue. Do remember to turn off your cell phones. We are going to have our regular Q&A in the screening room today, so any of you wishing to join us there and ask Ati some questions, we will be retiring there immediately following his talk here. And now a little background for you on our guest. Atipatra Ruga explores the border zones between fashion, performance, and contemporary art, making work that exposes and subverts the body in relation to structure, ideology, and politics. Bursting with eclectic multicultural references, carnal sensuality, and a dislocated undercurrent of humor, his performances, videos, costumes, and photographic images create a world where cultural identity is no longer determined by geographical origins, ancestry, or biological disposition, but is increasingly becoming a hybrid construct. His work has been exhibited around the world at such venerable institutions as Louisiana Museum of Modern Art, the 55th Venice Biennale, the Brass Artscape in Brussels, San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Tate Modern in London, and the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. Ati was also recently included in the Phaidon book, Younger Than Jesus, a directory of over 500 of the world's best artists under the age of 33. As he was recently in New York, there was a lovely piece in the New York Times. I don't know if any of you caught it, but I just have to read a snippet of it to you because it was so nice. This is from Sunday New York Times by Hillary Ross. Hillary Ross wrote, "For Performa's Fall Gala honoring Nigerian curator and writer Akwe Weezer, Atipatra Ruga dreamed up Over the Rainbow. The title, a riff on the Rainbow Nation, Archbishop Desmond Tutu's name for South Africa since apartheid's end in 1994. But in the space of 22 years, the happy family picture that we portrayed to the world is fading," said Ruga, who was born in the self-governing territory, the Republic of Transkei. and currently lives and works between Johannesburg and Cape Town. The rainbow itself is splitting, if there could be such a phenomenon, and the pot of gold is not there. Still, he listed the markers that have defined his lifetime: the opening of the country's borders, the spread of AIDS, and the internet's arrival. It was boom, hello, new friend, then boom, my friend is gone, then boom, let me find out more. Focusing on that overwhelming wonder, Ruga turns to anything but the real, twisting trauma with glitz and glamour to bring his audience into a utopia. Although, as he reiterated, utopia is always a highlight of the lack. Well, with nothing lacking here this evening, please join me in welcoming Ati Patra Ruga.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you doing? Thank you very much, and thank you, Christina. Wow, a little boy from a small town called East London in South Africa has managed to make it to the Michigan Theatre and has managed to also put together a wonderful review or a survey of 13 years of characters that bear witness to human strength, to escapism, to the triumph of the heart. Growing up in East London, I was lucky to be a gay boy who was highly supported by his family. However, in the real life, outside of that safe space, the real world happened, whereby there was teasing, there was bullying, there was violence, there was rejection. And the only way I could deal with that was to revert to TV, revert to Disney, revert to somewhere over the rainbow, and also at the same time create new worlds, either for dealing with the present or to propose the future for myself as a way of dealing. The way in which I do that in my work now is that, like, I always use the analogy of, you know, Clark Kent, you know, Batman, you know, all these various people. In civilian life, they somehow experience a trauma so much, either being beaten by a spider or even losing a parent or being displaced from some planet to some deep hole, where they start developing a multiple personality disorder, whereby they would go into a booth and then they would come out and save the world and inspire the world. In some way, they heal through that. For me, I have used a lot of characters, both in my real life growing up and also when I moved to Johannesburg and started my artistic practice. I used these characters to somehow deal with traumas that I would not necessarily be able to handle in civilian clothes. So welcome to Queens in Exile. These queens, I think it's about 5 of them, they've been able to help me out. And today it's going to be a survey of that, and also included will be the premiere of the movie that I showed last week at the Performer Kickoff for 2017, which is called Over the Rainbow. I call them avatars because the Sanskrit word for avatars is basically someone who comes to shed a light to people. And also, for me, it has been ranging, yes, from 2003 to 2000 and now, you know. And the first one was Miss Congo. Miss Congo happens when I start performing in Johannesburg. There she is. She is a reflection and also a throwback to me from when I started mixing fashion and also my club kid performances, which I was doing in Johannesburg. I would dress up so fabulously and then I'd walk down the streets. And from down those streets as well, people would react to me. And somehow that would validate me. And whether it's also resistance is somehow something that validates my existence. In 2006, I was also invited to go and show Miss Congo in Kinshasa, which is the capital of the Congo. I had never left South Africa other than visiting those two places. I was 23. And I had always expected the rest of Africa to be built like Johannesburg, like this industrial town of gold that is somehow is full of skyscrapers. And I remember arriving in Kinshasa and seeing the desolation that was there from, of course, as a result of colonialism, as a result of mismanagement in government, and its rape, literally. And for me, I started wearing clothes or in different scenarios I can, so that I could highlight or as Christina said in the introduction, I could highlight the lack of the infrastructure, the lack of what we would consider beauty in urban societies. So I started also taking up tapestries at around the same time. There's such a beautiful allegory to tapestries because what happens with it is that I literally am weaving my own fate. Instead of being defined by someone else, I'm sitting and or lying on my back here with my legs wide open in half crunch. Um, I'm creating my own fate. I am also weaving somehow a fate of a future nation whereby we are always powerful, we are always clever. And I scream because it's a half crunch. The space I'm performing in here, when I landed there in 2006, it was right after what you would call a civil war that happened between Laurent Kabila and Jean-Pierre Bemba. And it had left some destruction, especially in the art school that I was working in. And for me, I wanted to also just sit there and do graffitis or collaborate with graffiti artists in somehow recreating tableaus and new worlds as such. I could still fit into a size 34 dress then. And in retrospect, I will never ever reach that time ever again. Miss Congo as well is me taking a stab at ideas around the representation of the black woman in art. And for me, I always think of the Tintin in the Congo images, whereby they are seen and they are, in fact, very reductionist and very much not correct. You know, they're very, very silly, to be honest. So a work I did called She's Dancing in the Rain with her hand in the toaster was probably the first and last time because in the beginning I used to do my performances outside. My video performances were also outside because for me I felt that it's the largest stage. It's like probably 1,000,000 times bigger than the stage I'm on right now. And also the audience is not as constructed. I like the idea of going probably back to the people who I've always viewed as the people who've always bullied me, or the people who would somehow push me away, or something like that, and somehow show them again their work, or show them again, to basically fly in their faces and fly in the face of the many ideologies that they subscribe to. So there I was in a gallery, feeling like a caged bird. And also, on the wall, I'm doing graffiti. I've got this love for graffiti because I also find it to be a trace of something. A trace of either whether it's text, but it is a moment that is distilled for people to see, and it also is an intervention into nature. That's me with my head in balloons. I think that's where it all started. And then in 2007, I did the Inji Baba, which was a new character. Inji Baba literally means, in my language, which is Xhosa, hair loss, or the clinical term is alopecia. My mother suffered from alopecia, and her generation suffered from alopecia because they went to missionary schools. And in those missionary schools, as a sign of refinement, as a sign of being ladylike, the hot comb and the hot comb technique was used through their hair. But my take on it was born from this moment. I didn't ask for a pointer because it always looks so didactic. For me, I come to Switzerland. I was invited to go to Switzerland to go and do a performance series there. I did not have a single idea of what I was going to do then. And then I remember coming out of a nightclub and seeing a barrage of these posters, which turned out to be highly xenophobic posters. If any of you went to the German school, you would know that all of this is basically talking about creating a safer place. It becomes more literal there when you see one sheep that has been stabbed and is lying on its back, and with other sheep kicking the other sheep out. It speaks of fear, speaks of xenophobia. It still rings very loudly today with the recent happenings all over the world and also here in America. This brought so much trauma to me because going to Switzerland or going to Europe, I really truly thought that I was going to this space that was utopian, this space whereby there's eternal light, beauty, and also just knowledge and tolerance. But this happened. And in order for me to deal with this trauma, as I usually do, I created a Superman. But my Superman was in this form. So the picture itself became real life. I asked my producer to get me a sheep pen, made sure that all of them were white, and I built myself a suit made up of up to, I think it was 35 Afro costumes, you know, the ones that everyone wears during Halloween or end-of-year parties. I went in, but it was very interesting that this performance that I was doing and also recording was so telling. It was like I'm going into the sheep pen amongst these sheep. They freaked the hell out because in the images, in the photo series, you see them climbing on top of each other. There's even a moment where I'm shouting, "Oh my God, one pissed on my leg." And for me, it was really telling. And also, this whole sheep analogy that was used by the SVP party, and also seeing it in real life with real sheep, it was very interesting to see how patronizing, literally how patronizing the political party that was supposed to lead people really, yeah, they thought that these people were sheep as well, you know? That's me preening. I'm going to stop it there. It's available online. My work is mostly available online because art has to travel. So I killed that character because I was just so over it. I was just so over the isolation and over, I don't know, probably the static that afros call or synthetic afros cause. But it had to go. So in 2008, I created a new character called Beirut. Beirut is a smash-up of words. I think that's why I'm putting these words up as well. Beirut is a smash-up of two words, the capital of Lebanon, which has had an anything but utopian existence, and also the Book of Ruth, which is one of the two books that was somehow allowed into the Bible as we know it today. But also, for me, it is about the body dealing with, an autonomous body dealing with a sovereign state and always testing itself. And the event that led to me creating a new avatar was a case in South Africa in 2008 whereby a young lady was attacked for wearing a miniskirt in a taxi rank. And one of the reasons that the people gave was that the miniskirt had given them these feelings and actually was the motivation behind the attack. This really was a trauma to me, both as a South African who's raised with one of the most progressive constitutions and was raised to believe in these principles, these founding principles of this country. And also, yeah, it was those two things, both as a man and also as a South African, you know. And I ended up creating Beirut, and also, once again, I wanted to recreate the scene of the crime. I feel one of the great motivations for it was the fact that I wanted, one of the leading things in creating the image of Beirut was that I wanted to create such a hyper-feminine character, put it onto my body and embody it, and somehow elicit or solicit the responses to be beaten up as some kind of penance, as some kind of me somehow dealing with the fact that I am partly responsible for patriarchal nonsense sometimes. So the action is me trying to catch a taxi to a place called Atlantis. Atlantis in South Africa or in the Western Cape is anything but what you read in the libraries or in the Olympian sense or the classical sense. It is a township, it is a working class township, and yeah, it's in need of help as always. So I wait for a taxi to take me to Atlantis. I think also at that point, I was starting to investigate the history of imagery, continuing from Miss Congo. I wanted to continue and see truly I don't know, music videos, a very hypersexualized view of the woman's body and all of that. And for me, yeah, that look came up. Fishnet stockings, a bathing suit that is literally my ex-husband's wrestling uniform. But I turned it back to front so that it works. I hope the look worked as well. The interesting thing about the gentleman is that he didn't beat me up. And there's two reasons. I think that is the grace of human beings. We need to trust each other more and not believe in stereotypes sometimes. And secondly, I think that the camera being there was a very, very pacifying tool for the people who might have thought of inflicting harm upon me. Because I believe that the camera makes people perform themselves. Earlier, I spoke about me as Beirut wanting to test things, and one of my favorite actions in the performance was the most mundane of things, which was basically to scale walls. I used to just love just like feeling myself against churches, against police stations, against buildings, to try once again to solicit this violent response that would somehow make something valid. Or it's like feeling like to cause yourself pain so that you could feel something, so that a trauma could work out. It was a very anxious time in my life as well, because the xenophobic attacks in Johannesburg happened the same autumn. I call it the worst autumn of my life. So I ended up in the church. And in this church, I ended up as well climbing it because I literally wanted to feel my body against this structure, whether it is religion, whether it is patriarchy, which is all interconnected really. I think that by the mere fact that there's only 2 books in the Bible written by women, I went quite high. I did some push-ups. I still miss that body. Funny analogy is that my sister goes to one of these churches because they're like, I come from East London, whereby we're famous for making the Mercedes-Benz, and also we're famous for like happy clappy churches. And my sister, being the black sheep in the family, she's the only one who somehow became quite a big Christian. My family was raised without a religion other like Christianity, Islam or whatever, but we're like ancestor worshippers, which is dope in itself, you can say. That was around the time Margaret, my assistant, said, "Come down, you're acting crazy." So I showed it to my sister one Christmas. It took a long time for us to speak again. I believe after this, it was the xenophobic attacks. I also replied to those. But at the end of it all, I ended up creating more looks for Beirut. Beirut is a very weaponized body. If you're aware of Grace Jones or even the Helmut Newton pictures. There's this body of a woman, very physically Spartan, you know? No one can touch her. So I think I wanted to work with this idea of the body. And yeah, the helmet is representative of that. Hair is a highly politicized, what do you call hair? A highly politicized organ of the body in itself. And for me, I did this still around the Johannesburg Central Station, once again wanting to feel myself against a structure. And the Johannesburg Central Station used to be called the John Foster Square. And the John Foster Square was famous for incarcerating young people, young students who were revolting during apartheid, and they would die in detention as the final kicks of a repressive government, a genocidal government. So she also bored me after a while because xenophobia and patriarchy was getting to me. So I killed her, Beirut. And I did it with the help of Photoshop. And also, I was highly inspired by Caspar Friedrich, who's the romantic artist, the romantic painter from I don't know what the hell. For me, this image in itself is basically about me being smaller in the world, because that's the whole point of it. Me somehow humbling myself as I'm about to throw myself off a cliff to somehow humble myself to the world so that I could create a new character. The new character that then happens is me digging into how my masculinity has been shaped by my culture, by the world, and all. And Ilulwane then becomes the next character that I use. And Ilulwane is a word that is literally in English, it's a bat. But also it refers to a boy who goes to circumcision school, which is a rite of passage that I've been through. And basically what happens in our modern days is that boys die by the droves because of infection, because of ill treatment, because of they're trying to harden you up, you know, so that you are some kind of like, I don't know, productive male in society. So some of them die, some of them go to hospital, some of them are castrated. But what happens when they come back, instead of them having the same celebrations that the mothers have, with their sons, rejoicing that their sons are back home, what happens is that the boys who actually come from hospital are somehow ostracized. So they become Ilulwane. You're another a bird, you're another a mouse, you're another a boy, you're another a man. And as we all know with Hollywood, Dracula happens in the outskirts of people's favors and also happens at night in a very, very Vespertine, clandestine way. So I wanted to create now a character that would heal all of this and heal the mothers who had actually lost their children by creating an alternative procession or an alternative parade. And what happens with that, I did a work called A Body in Question first. The body in question goes like this. I never know. Yes. Lights, please. You are love, you are love, you are love, you are love. That's how the video ends. The title comes from an old BBC series that I was really crazy about growing up called The Body in Question. It was for medical students and it was a travel through the body. And yeah, it was about, yeah, just discovering the body. But the boy there is singing in a very, very, very disconcerted, disembodied kind of way. And at the moment, I wanted to raise as well ideas about trans rights, also the conflict that happens within one's identity, biological identity. If the body can betray you by giving you a cancer or getting an infection leading in your death, it kind of brings the body into question. So I started carrying boys around like a Pieta, and then Ilulwane becomes this character towards the end. The white blanket with the red stripes is a blanket that we wear when we go into the bush for our initiation. And it's supposed to remind us of our mothers. It's called Mamdolo, which is a mother's name. And women are not allowed to visit us for a period of 3 weeks up to 6 months sometimes, from different clan or nation to another. I did a large-scale performance where I asked my producer again to please get me an Olympic-sized swimming pool so I could recreate this ritual that I really wanted to do for these mothers. So I got an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and to represent the mothers, the rejoicing mothers, or the mothers celebrating their child, probably in the afterlife in this case, I got 12 synchronized swimmers from Connecticut. And this work was commissioned by a performer in 2011. Also, I love old Hollywood, you know, because it gives you, yeah, you get those sort of like things that captivate you to such an extent that you do not think about your surroundings or any pain. It could be an opium. So we lead to probably my biggest series at the moment, which was The Future White Woman of Azania. Having dealt with ideas of nationalism, having dealt with ideas of masculinity, having dealt with ideas of the body resisting structures, especially like state structure, I created a character called The Future White Woman of Azania. And in short, you can call them the FWWOA. And the Future White Woman of Azania revolved mostly around that word at the end, Azania. Azania is a word that is first mentioned. It refers to the coastline, the East African coastline, up down to the Cape Agulhas, which is closer to Cape Town. And it was first mentioned as well. It was first mentioned by Pliny the Elder in a book called The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, where that was in 40 AD. So it was very, very interesting for me to know that my existence has never started in 1652, when apparently Jan van Riebeeck discovered Southern Africa, or my life didn't start in 94 when Nelson Mandela became president. That I have a longer history and a pre-colonial history, probably one that is richer and more empowering than the past two events that I'm speaking about right now. So the character is created with 250 balloons filled up with liquid. It's damn heavy. And the performance itself is basically me walking from one place to another. And also, within that, I am popping the balloons and shedding somehow this identity that's made up of nothing, which is human breath, really, because all those balloons are not hand, but mouth blown. Um, so with this case here, it was the first time I performed in a township. Like it was somehow I was confronting a history that I had run away from 17 and when I went to college in Johannesburg and all that bullying, all that isolation. So I remember walking past the old tata there, and he was with the beautiful baba there, and I remember crying because I didn't know whether I was crying because I didn't want him to hit me because of previous experiences that I had. But I remember him giving me a moment of grace by asking me what I was doing. And in a very ugly Kim Kardashian face, I was like, I'm trying to make art. And he was like, continue doing what you're doing. It is beautiful. And this was a moment of grace. Once again, my stereotypes that I had built from probably one or two experiences around a whole blanket of people was smashed right in front of my face. And I really take great pleasure in that, in having my prejudices broken and me having my mind stretched to limits that literally, inevitably make me a better person. So another event was basically going onto a statue. These happen everywhere in South Africa. We call them the Grateful Dead, whereby there's a list of people. In this case, this was commemorating the Anglo-Boer War, which we now call the First South African War, whereby two groups of white men, the Afrikaans and the British, were fighting for supposedly their land in Cossack territory. And in this list, there isn't a single woman, whether white or black. There isn't a single black person. So I always wonder, like, who helped you navigate this land? You know? But anyway, I remember getting into the fight with the organizers of this, or they were like, you can't go on the statue and do whatever. And I felt that I was being isolated once again. I was being chased out of history or away from the statue. And what I did was just, I climbed on it as an intervention, as a guerrilla intervention. And I started popping my balloons, which let out a paint that I hope is still there, to try and insert myself into history. Because that is the power of today and also the power of tomorrow. You can change things today to make a brighter tomorrow, or you can start being an architect for a brighter future. And that's where the Future White Woman of Azania title comes from. The fact that we could be any character that we want to be, that, yeah, we can be Melania and become First Lady within a very short space of time, you know? Yeah, big up, she did it. She did it. So another thing, this artwork here, which is one of my masterworks, is called The Night of the Long Knives. The Night of the Long Knives is basically a theory that most white South Africans had, that the moment Nelson Mandela dies, every black person would rise as one body and just go and slit everyone's throats. You know, the natives would be rebelling. And that was in 2013. Nelson Mandela died after I had created this work. For me, I wanted to once again create a counter-proposal to such a silly, unproven blanket, or like blanketing of people in one shade. So yeah, this is how my Azanians would look when they go and attack, supposedly, the settlers. On top, you see the character, the Future White Woman of Azania. I'm trying to construct a world as well. So the zebra is a saber-toothed zebra. And I have a national flower. That's my national animal. And then I have a national flower. The national flower really could not be botanical. So it was just a bunch of hats that were just like plonked together. And also those are my handmaidens, but you don't know if either they're handmen or handmaidens. And I thoroughly appreciate that. I do not like many descriptions sometimes. I try. So I work with tapestry, which is also another way in which I create these worlds. This one was originally a stained glass, but I turned it into a coat of arms. You can see once again the markers. Also borrowing from the Moorish tradition, which is like, yeah, it's pre-Columbian, when the Moors were basically the power in Europe. And also I've written Nihil Reich at the bottom. There's so many coat of arms, and there's also so many mottos that I had. There's one that says, Azania, a nation that should have known better, and all those things. So I'm trying to turn the idea of nationalism on its head to try and create a world where I'm empowered. Movement is another thing. Only us looking at that image know that these people are moving across borders and entering into lands that they would probably think that are uninhabited, and that's where the title of the work probably comes from, which is A Land Without a People for a People Without a Land. But for me, as the character who is documenting his movement, I have not a single idea whose land I am taking over. And it's with education, of course, that we amend that. Same style. Miss Azania, because no self-respecting nation does not have a beauty queen. We started with Miss Congo. I truly feel that the whole parade of nationalism, I remember Miss South Africa or Miss World in South Africa, we only started entering it when the sanctions were lifted. And also with this, I wanted to just basically talk about saying there's something very profound about it, in the sense that saying that there's a Miss this, yeah, Amy. Saying that basically that the woman's body, I always have felt, has been used as a site for nationalism. It's used as a site in which bodies, like it's a battleground in some places that are experiencing war, whether we're talking about rape, whether we're talking about taking over Mother Russia. It's always a very feminized thing when it comes to the woman's body. And the performance of it becomes this procession sometimes of women from various neighborhoods or various locales, you know? And yeah, that's what I wanted to do with this. It's a tapestry done in petit point, so it's basically painstakingly done. I think it's a quarter of this complete one here. It's been nicely blown up. So there I am doing a self-portrait of myself, dead, I don't know, with my head chopped off. And somehow, once again, I'm trying to do a certain penance with this procession. On that side, we added a bit of color to the guys with the pointy hats that shall not be mentioned. Moving on. A herald, like heraldry is also another thing that I enjoy. Sorry, I speak 5 languages, and English is number 4, I think. So heraldry is one of the things that I'm really, really obsessed with. And for me, this reminds me of a chicken brand in South Africa called Chicken Licken. And the name of the artwork, because every nation always has this rising eagle, you know? An Adler in Germany, they called it, or a phoenix rising from the ashes. And for me, the work is called The Phoenix. The phoenix is actually a chicken. Because with all the bravado, all the parades that we do to sort of like symbolize our power as nations, deep down inside, we do forget the power of people. And when the people rise, we always know that, yeah, these Adlers are actually chicken. They're not the leaders, we are. Oh, that's me being confined into a space for a performance again. So I'm interested in this one, this whole idea of popping and being reborn again, and sort of like creating a new character, you know? With the Future White Women of Azania, you'll see in the corner there on the right-hand side, they're filled with these ultraviolet lights. But with this one, the performance was for La Chica Boom to pop 250 balloons within a space of a minute, and it was filled up with talcum powder. I wanted the people on stage to feel like they are not in a theater proscenium. I wanted them to smell. I wanted them to choke on the fumes and the miasma and all of that. There's La Chica Boom. She's freaking out. More freak out.
The government of the...
Oh no, you can catch that online. It is my constitution. for the versatile kingdom of Azania, and it introduces queens in exile, and it also introduces my future constitution for the world that rises to the fabulous occasion that is me. Queens in Exile starts, now, up until I don't know. And basically, it leads up to a video that I'd love to show you, and also is about how one builds ideas of faith. You know, there's always that character, like someone crossing the Delaware, or Jesus in a storm trying to restore faith in people, whether it's religious or nationalistic. The idea of water, or the idea of crossing waters, crossing rivers, crossing seas, somehow solidifies a person's strength. And so that's the versatile Queen Ivy, doing her thing, crossing water. I think she's having a moment. She's just chilling and like having an epiphany at sea, maybe. I started doing these self-portraits once again because I like redesigning myself. I like trying to come up with new possibilities for who I might be. Here I have the most beautiful pair. And also, at the same time, the hands up, don't shoot gesture, performative gesture, becomes an ode to art history, because you always find this really, like in Minoan sculptures, whereby this person with their hands up like this and also having a beautiful pair. Those are all individually colored flowers, silk flowers. Somehow I wanted to somehow be absorbed into it as well, because at the end of the day, it does become about design. It does become about how I seduce you into these sad stories or into these harrowing stories that somehow I need to transcend, you know, through a use of bright colors and all. Okay, I've got a thing for a pair. Maybe one day I'll get one. Yeah. And that's me posing with the versatile Queen Ivy. And there's a very long storyline around this character that is always existing. I'm the only male in a land full of women, and I've been taken hostage. And after everyone is done with me, I get killed. This work is called A Man Who Queened Himself. Well, I queened myself. I created my own destiny, and which I'm very, very proud of. And I think that I've come full circle in my work in that sense, that I've discovered so many things that otherwise through art, through any other way of or profession I would not have. Or maybe, but I feel that I found my way of dealing with my own drama, you know. I also do sculptures. More sculptures. Applique and craft is another thing. There's a power in that because I get to focus on an idea for a very long time and then I get to finish it. There's great power in being able to finish what you start. They're all 3D scans of my body. So it is me being a performance artist, yet I am performing something that is still. But if you look back in that sculpture, the one that I climbed, I feel that I'm trying to memorialize myself and my queerness and my campness and all of this to somehow heal once again. Those are all tiny flowers that have been appliqued onto a 3D scan of me sitting on two boys, butt to butt. And that's another sculpture that I did. Those are my beautiful legs. And also, that's a 3D scan of me as the elder. Somehow, I feel that there's something so empowering about this character, you know? Having kicked someone's butt onto the floor. The work is called The Thud of a Snowflake, because that's how I always imagine myself falling. And that's the versatile Queen Ivy, y'all. A self-portrait that I've just recently shown at Performer last week, along with this new work. I introduce to you Over the Rainbow, the new video work by Atipatra Ruga and Studio. You better work.
Ndicela nisihlalise kakuhle.
Vala amehlo.
Vala amehlo. Phefumla, khululeka, sebenzisa amehlo engqondo, sibeke emazweni olwandle, kube ngathi uhamba emoyeni. Ncuma, ubale iminyaka nee-blessings zakho, bhiyozela iimpumelelo zakho. Mandikubuze ukuba yintoni impumelelo emagameni akho. Ewe, yes, enkosi, thank you. Now keep that picture in mind to refer to from time to time. Nayithenjiswa inkululeko, ithengiwe ngegazi lomzabalazo, yaselebhreyithishwa ngekwaito. Thobela, thobela. Sawavula amasango, kwangena i-intanethi, kwangena ama-azania, kwangena ingculazi, kwaqala izinto.
Now keep that picture in mind. Now keep that picture in mind.
You don't come around to me see in the week. You don't have a chance to call me on the phone. You don't come around to me see in the week. You don't have a chance to call me on the phone. But Friday night, yes I know. Yes I know. I know I must be ready for you. Just be waiting for you. Friday night, yes I know. Yes I know. I know I must be ready for you. Just be waiting for you. Chorus. I'm no weekend special. I'm no weekend special. I'm no weekend special. I'm no weekend special.
You don't come around
I'm no
to
weekend,
me, see,
daddy's
in the
home,
week.
weekend
You
special.
don't have a chance
I'm
to
no
call me on
weekend,
the phone.
daddy's home,
You don't come
weekend
around
special.
to me, see,
Verse
in the
2.
week.
Another
You don't
lonely
have a
night,
chance
on
to
my
call
own
me on
again.
the phone.
How
But
long for your
Friday
love?
night, yes, I know.
I need
Yes,
your
I know.
touch. Yes,
I know
I
I
do.
must be ready for you.
You don't
Just
come
be waiting
around
for you.
to me see in the week.
Friday night, yes, I know.
You don't
Yes,
have a
I know.
chance to
I know
call
I
me
must
on the
be ready
phone.
for you.
How
Just be
long for
waiting
your
for
love?
you.
I need your
Chorus.
touch. Yes,
I'm no
I do.
weekend
You don't
special.
come around to
I'm
me
no
see in the week.
weekend special.
You don't have a
I'm no
chance
weekend
to call me on the
weekend
phone.
special. I'm no weekend special.
But Friday
I'm no
night, yes,
weekend
I know.
Daddy's home.
Yes, I
weekend
know.
Special.
I know I must
I'm
be
no
ready for
weekend
you.
Daddy's
Just be
home.
waiting for
weekend
you.
Special.
Friday
Verse
night,
2.
yes, I know.
Another lonely
Yes,
night
I know.
on my own again.
I know I must
How
be
I
ready
long
for
your
you.
love.
Just be waiting
I
for
need your
you.
touch.
Bridge.
Yes, I do.
I'm your
You
weekend
don't come
special.
around to me,
I'm your
see, in
weekend
the week.
special. I'm
You
no
don't have a
weekend
chance
special.
to call me on the phone.
That is all. I'm no weekend special. X4. You don't love me no more. X3. You don't love me no more.
You don't have a chance
I know.
to call me on the phone. How long for your love? You don't have a chance to call me on the phone. How long for your love?
I'm your weekend special.
How long for your love?
I'm your weekend special.
How long for your love?
I'm your weekend special.
Ken Special.
Ken special. Ken special. Special.
We ain't done yet. Lights, please. Thank you. Sorry for that, audience.
kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade makube njalo makube njalo kude kube ngunaphakade kude kube ngunaphakade.
I would like to dedicate this to the students of South Africa who are continuing the fight for free, decolonialized, and also depatriarchalized education, especially in the arts. Thank you.